Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Sparkle, and today we have an incredibly inspiring guest who's going to share her journey to early retirement. And get this, she did it all as a single woman in her 40s. Please give a huge welcome to Sarah. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. I know our audience is super excited to hear about you and your story. So, let's just dive right in. The burning question everyone has. How old are you, and how long have you been retired?
I am currently 44 years old, and I officially retired about 4 years ago when I was 40.
40. That's incredible. Do you have any kids or family?
I have a daughter, and she's 14 now. She's a big part of my why for wanting to retire early.
That makes so much sense. And where in the country do you live, urban or rural?
I live in a major city in the Southwest, so it's a pretty vibrant urban environment.
Sarah, your definition of retirement is really interesting. You mentioned that for a long time you thought it was just the absence of work. How did that perspective change for you?
It definitely evolved. When I was younger, I saw retirement as people just stopping. My dad retired from the Air Force at 55 and was content watching TV. But for me, as I got older, I realized I had this huge bucket list of things I wanted to do that work just didn't allow for. Now, my view is that retirement is really about financial independence. It's the freedom to do what I want, when I want, and to stay busy with things I'm passionate about.
That's such a powerful reframe. Can you tell us about your career before you retired? What did you do, and what was your income like?
Sure, my entire career was in land use, management, environmental planning, and archaeology. For the last 10 years before I retired, I managed a team of scientists, which involved a lot of permit acquisition and studies in geology, biology, and archaeology. When I retired, my salary was around $92,000 a year from that primary job.
That's a good income.
It was, but I also had a side gig for those same 10 years, teaching environmental science, cultural anthropology, and archaeology online. That brought in an additional $30,000 to $50,000 annually.
So, you were essentially working two jobs for a long time. Why did you decide to retire when you did at 40, when your initial plan might have been different?
Honestly, it was largely due to circumstances. The work stress was pretty high in my primary job. While I loved the subject matter and the people, the demands of finding clients, finalizing contracts, and getting paid were a lot. There was also a significant personal event that really shifted my perspective. My husband left me about 6 months before I retired. Experiencing that loss, combined with the stress of my job, made me realize that life is short and I wanted to prioritize my time differently.
Sarah, when did you seriously start thinking about retirement? And when did that thinking turn into a concrete decision to actually do it?
I had always been interested in finance and started contributing to my 401k pretty early on. The serious decision to retire came after my husband left. I went on personal leave, and when I returned to work, it was just different. People were trying to be supportive, but it was awkward. I realized my focus had completely shifted. I knew I needed to make a change for my well-being.
That sounds incredibly challenging. So, what were the major steps you took to plan for this early retirement?
The biggest step was actually working with a financial advisor just before I retired. I wanted professional confirmation that I was financially ready for 30 years of retirement. Once he confirmed that, I focused on finishing up projects at work. I also knew I wanted to keep teaching online as a way to stay busy and engaged, even though I didn't necessarily need the income.
And what did your finances look like leading up to retirement?
In the few years right before I retired, my husband and I had accumulated about $900,000 in our 401k accounts, primarily invested in index funds. We also had about $60,000 in cash, plus some inherited stocks. Our only liabilities were a small remaining mortgage and about $12,000 in credit card debt. My goal was to enter retirement debt-free, so I paid off the mortgage just before I officially retired.
Smart move. What was your overall financial plan for retirement?
Our initial goal was $1 million in assets, and we projected needing about $40,000 a year. As we got closer to that number, we had a much clearer picture. We realized we'd likely spend around 80% of our combined pre-retirement income. So we increased our 401k contributions significantly, often over 20% of our salaries.
What were your biggest concerns, financial or non-financial, as you approached retirement?
Financially, my biggest concern was outliving my assets. I did a lot of research, used financial calculators, and eventually felt confident my assets would last into my mid-90s. Outside of that, I knew I needed a solid plan for how I would spend my time. I was lucky to have a strong support system of family and friends and a lot of diverse interests. I was determined not to sit around feeling sorry for myself. My plan extended beyond just the money. It was about how I would thrive in this new phase of life.
So, the day finally came. How did you ultimately retire? Was it a big celebration or more quiet?
It was pretty quiet, honestly. Given everything I'd been through, I wasn't in the mindset for a big fanfare. My main focus was just wrapping up projects at work. We were short-handed, so I wanted to make sure everything was completed and closed out smoothly. I told my coworkers my plans: hiking, biking, travel, spending time with my daughter. It had been my little bucket list for months.
What, if anything, didn't go so well?
Honestly, when it comes to the act of retiring itself, I have no complaints. It was a smooth transition.
That's amazing to hear. And where did you find the courage to make such a big leap, especially at 40?
For me, there was no courage required. I was 100% sure I wanted to retire when I did. I loved the people and the subject matter, but I just couldn't deal with the stress anymore. I truly value those friendships, but I never want that level of work stress again.
How was the adjustment, especially those first few months after retirement?
Given my unusual circumstances, it was a confusing few years in some ways, but I immediately appreciated not having to worry about projects or jumping out of bed at 5 a.m. The realization that I could say no. Thank you to anything I didn't want to do was incredibly freeing. As time went on, that feeling of freedom just grew.
How is retirement life now? What do you love, and what, if anything, do you dislike?
Retirement life now is truly living a dream. What I love most is the complete absence of a schedule and external expectations. While that sounds great, it's also crucial to create your own plan for how you want to spend your time. I love that I can pretty much plan to do anything, from reading all day to flying to New Zealand, though I haven't done either yet. The future feels wide open, and I'm constantly discovering new interests. For example, I recently decided to visit every museum in my city, and after that, every animal sanctuary. My activities are only limited by my imagination. What I dislike? Anything related to getting older. If an old sports injury flares up, or I have a restless night, it can definitely impact my plans. My goal is to stay in the best shape possible to enjoy all this freedom.
What does an average day look like for you now?
It varies hugely. A big chunk of my time recently has been developing 2 new online courses for the college, where I teach one in global health, medical anthropology, and another in old world archaeology. That's been fascinating, even if it's a huge time sink. But on any given day, I could be teaching, developing courses, socializing with friends, visiting kids at the group home next door, attending book club or doing yard work, planning trips with my daughter. I also prioritize going to the gym, swimming, hiking, and biking.
What are your future plans?
I'm looking forward to more adventures like exploring caves and going on a cruise. I've really focused on increasing my social contacts over the last 4 years, and that will continue. And, of course, staying heavily involved in all those activities I mentioned earlier.
Looking back on your journey, what do you wish you knew in advance?
Frankly, I wish I had had a better handle on the approximate amount of money I would spend annually. I intentionally didn't solidify a retirement budget until I had been retired for a full year. I figured I was in good enough financial shape to handle various spending levels. As it turns out, that first year really allowed me to accurately determine what my spending would be like for the next few years.
Finally, what advice do you have for others, especially single women who are dreaming of early retirement?
My obvious advice is to ensure your financial plan brings you to your projected financial number for retirement. If you're in your 40s or 50s and still far from that number, consider working a few more years or starting a side hustle. Having multiple income sources is key. Real estate ventures are another great option. Assuming you're financially ready, make sure you have a well-developed plan for how you'll spend your time. Most importantly, good luck and truly enjoy your retirement. It's an incredible journey.
Sarah, this has been so insightful and inspiring. Thank you for sharing your story with us today.
My pleasure, Sparkle.
And that's all for today's episode. If you found this interview helpful, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next empowering story. Let us know in the comments below if you're planning for early retirement and what your biggest takeaway from Sarah's story was. See you next time.